All right, so it's early and I can't really talk that loud, so I can't get too animated today. But I don't want to wake up my kids; they're right upstairs. In any case, going ice fishing today, so I wanted to get this video out before I did that. Um, I've been racking my brain to try to figure out what's the deal with just the media narrative that is just completely like there's no complication in their view. There's no mitigating circumstances. It's just Ukraine, 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 Ukraine. Now, obviously, there are some of us who know people that live in Ukraine, and we're worried about our friends. A lot of missionaries in Ukraine, churches, things like that. Even if you don't know anybody in Ukraine, you can still feel bad for, the Ukrainian people because there's a war being fought on their land, and that's terrifying for everybody. And again, I'm anti-war, so I feel bad for that always. Even when the Americans are out, making war on other people's lands, I'm against that as well. So there's that aspect to it. And so, we can pray for Ukraine. And, I have no issue with people talking about how they're praying for the people of Ukraine and things like that. What I'm talking about is the weirdness of all the flags. The Ukrainian flag is flying over, Parliament in UK, Ukrainian flags on people's, profiles, and just the gushing about Ukraine as if this is God's kingdom on earth. This is paradise. When the reality is, now that I've kind of looked into Ukraine the past 10 years or so, the reality of Ukraine is very different. The reality of Ukraine is highly questionable. Let's just say that, and I'll probably say more at some point. But the point of this video, though, is I'm trying to figure out what is it that's driving people to, put the Ukrainian flag on the Empire State Building or whatever it is. You've seen it a million places. Even The Simpsons. I saw a funny gab from Ashley Ray. Let's see if I can find it real quick. This is a good one. Here it is. She says, "Good morning. We're in hell," and it's The Simpsons with Ukrainian flags. Like this is just above and beyond. And I think obviously everyone's doing this for different reasons. There are some people that are just fully programmed robots, and whatever the thing is that the media is pushing today, that's what they're pushing. And I feel like there's a lot of people like that, and oftentimes I hope that there's not as many people like that as there are, but there are a lot of people that are just like that. They're essentially freaking robots. But for some people, I think that there's kind of a guilty conscience thing going on. And I put most of the Big Eva people that are doing this in the same category. And here's what got me thinking about this. I want you to listen to these over the top, just sort of ridiculous tweets from Ray Ortlund, which I've got some content potentially dropping about Ray Ortlund's son. It's just like the apple does not fall too far from the tree. In any case, listen to these tweets. I just want you to hear them, and then I'm going to tell you what my theory is. Ray Ortlund says this. After some discouraging years in the USA, we Americans are now looking to Ukraine for renewed inspiration and finding it in abundance. Thank you, Ukraine. The people of Ukraine are giving a precious gift to the whole world, living proof that cynicism is empty, cowardice is contemptible, and courage for what's right is deeply thrilling. Thank you, dear Ukraine. It makes me feel gross even reading these. Just the way he writes is gross. It's like precious. It's thrilling. Every time I think about Ukraine, I just shiver. It's just like, oh man, be a man, dude. You could act like a man. Anyway, next one. The wretched Putin sobers us with the ghastly evils we are capable of. The heroic Ukrainians inspire us with the noble sacrifices God graces us with. The foundations of our existence are being made publicly obvious. May they leave a deep impression for an entire generation. I think there's just one more that I'm going to read. It's just so over the top. Anyway, here's the last one. We didn't realize how deeply we were longing to see some nobility in prominent leaders. We'd been so disappointed by both our major parties that our hearts were left more broken than we knew. Then, a whole nation rises up in courageous magnificence, giving us fresh heart. Now, even if you knew nothing of the conflict, right? If you knew nothing of the conflict, you could probably get some hints from the way that Ray has decided to write these tweets that there's some whitewashing going on. There's never somebody that's all bad or all good. Like people are usually, especially political leaders I'm talking about here. It's very rare. Like what I used to always say about Donald Trump is that you can tell they're lying about him because they're making him to be Satan, essentially. So everything he's ever done is bad, and they'll find fault with literally everything. And people aren't like that. People are a mixture of, bad motivations, good motivations, especially politicians. And politicians always have a sketchy track record and things like that. That's just the way it is. But you can tell, even if you knew nothing of the conflict, you could tell that there's some artistic license here going on, and he's trying to paint it. Look, they're the bad guys, they're the black hats, you got the white hats, and that it's just as simple as that. I mean, it's very easy to determine, and you just go with the good guys. Of course, what are you, some kind of a psychopath? But knowing about the conflict a little bit, again, I'm against invading another country, for whatever reason, right? I'm against it. So I'm not for Russia. But what I'm saying is that especially for Americans, like, we don't really have a whole moral high ground here, because Americans are doling out peacekeeping with an M16 all over the place, right? I don't know. Do Russians use AK-47s? I don't know. Anyway, and so we don't really have a leg to stand on here. But he's gonna go and do that, and he's gonna start trying to make this seem like it's very, very black and white when it's anything but. If you've read anything about the history of this situation the last 10 years, it's anything but black and white. Zelensky doesn't seem to be a very good guy. And again, don't get all crazy on me and say, whoa, if you're saying Zelensky's not a good guy, then you must be saying Putin's a good guy. Because a lot of people in the comments the last 2 days on YouTube have been saying that. What are you, for Putin? I don't know how else to say that I'm not for invading another country. I'm pretty sure Putin's a bad guy as well. The point, though, is that what is driving Ray to do this, right? Well, I think he gives you a huge window into this. He keeps talking about the last 2 years, how disappointing it's been, how broken we were. We didn't know it. We were just looking for leadership. We were looking for someone to rise up. And he's probably crying while he writes this. I mean, this is just so embarrassing for a man. It's just, he's quivering with rage and feelings. And so anyway, I think there's a little bit of the, of a guilty conscience going on. It's kind of like King David, right? King David, he had just murdered Uriah so that he could have Bathsheba as a wife. And so, the way that he's confronted about that by the prophet of God, Samuel tells a story about a man who gets his little lamb stolen. And David gets all of this rage. He's like indignant. He can't believe that someone would steal someone's lamb and then kill it. And he's like, this person shall not live. And then Samuel famously says, you're the man, because he's actually talking about you, because you actually killed a person. And why did David get so uppity about that? Why is he so upset about someone killing a lamb, that's what lambs are for? Because he's got a guilty conscience. And so he overcompensates at the time when he's confronted about a small thing. He overreacts because he knows deep down inside he's a freaking murderer. I think Big Eva needs this story. They need this narrative to be true. The narrative essentially is Putin is the tyrant, and Ukraine is the freedom-loving, good. They're the side of good. They're essentially, the holy army fighting back the tyrant. That's their story. That's the narrative that they've embraced. So that's why they're going over the top with gushing. That's why they're all flying the flag. They're all, Zelensky's this lion of courage and things like that. Yeah, sure, he's a lion of courage. That's, not allowing men between 18 and 60 to leave the country and force conscripting them. Yeah. But forget all that. He's a courageous lion, a freedom-loving man. They need this story to be true because they're part of their own story in the United States and in Canada and in the Western world in general. Big Eva, Ray Ortlund, all of these guys, they're part of this story, except in reverse. they've participated in the tyranny here at home. They're the ones that cheered on as pastors would get arrested for having church at the beginning of COVID. They're the ones who said nothing as pastors were being arrested later on in COVID. They're the ones that are for all of the vaccine mandates and all of the mask mandates and all of the just the various kinds of tyranny that has come. They're the ones that are participating in the Black Lives Matter riots and all of this stuff. Like, they need this story, and they're overreacting for this story because here at home, they've got a guilty conscience. I hope they have a guilty conscience, because if they're just seared at this point, then they're lost. They're done. They're participating in the revolution, in other words. So they're going in and they're whitewashing Zelensky and Ukraine and all of that kind of stuff. In the same way that David overreacted with the fake story about the lamb, right? Because they were guilty. Ray Ortlund is part of tyranny here at home. He's part of the state church. Anything CNN or MSNBC is saying, Ray Ortlund will be saying as well. He sprinkles a little Jesus on it, and he takes a few liberties with the abortion stuff, but still ultimately, women are the victims, of course. He's a feminist, all these kinds of things, right? Like this is what Big Eva is. Ray Ortlund's a good avatar for Big Eva. In fact, he might be the OG. I'm not sure about this, but I think he might be the OG. So he writes these gushing, embarrassing tweets about Ukraine out of guilt because he's participated in the tyranny here at home. No, he's not killing people. No, he's not for physical violence, at least not totally, because obviously he most likely did not condemn the violence of the riots very strongly. But in any case, that's what's going on here. And obviously, every tyrant is on a spectrum, right? So the tyranny here is not as bad as the tyranny in Canada, which is not as bad as the tyranny, in Australia or whatever. Like, it's all a spectrum. That's what I think that's my theory. That's my theory. That's why you see Big Eva kind of going headlong into this story that's being spun by the mainstream media. They need this story to be true, because if it's not true and they can't go along with it, there's no pressure release valve to release the pressure of them participating in tyranny here at home. It's a King David type situation all over again. And so this story has to be true. Unfortunately, it's turning out to not be very true at all. The more you look into the Ukraine-Russia situation, again, you don't support the invasion, but the worse Ukraine looks, at least the Ukrainian government is what I'm saying. The worse they look, the more you look into it. Pretty violent, pretty merciless, pretty tyrannical. But Big Eva needs it to be true because of what's happened the last 2 years. That's what Ray keeps saying. The last 2 years have been so discouraging, so troubling. And so but it's troubling for the wrong reasons, though. And he's participated in the zeitgeist. And so that's why he's going so deeply and so over the top into this Ukraine thing. That's my theory. Let me know what you think of it in the comments below. I hope you found this video helpful. God bless.